Hello. Welcome to Kindly Neurodivergent with Kay. This show is to spend quality time with each other, kindly discussing the similarities and wide range of differences we experience. In lieu of Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, I have Kristina McCormick and Kyle Russow with me today to discuss misconceptions about disability. Kyle has long been an advocate for those with disabilities. Now 29, he has turned this passion into a career as a direct support professional and qualified intellectual disability professional. He also uses his experience to create videos sharing his life with cerebral palsy on YouTube. Kyle and Kristina even worked together to promote inclusion and positivity with the CP Cerebral Palsy Chronicles. Kristina is a 28-year-old teacher, traveler, and cat mom who enjoys working out and advocating for people with cerebral palsy. Welcome, Kristina and Kyle.
Thank you for having us. This is our first show in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good to be back. At least I wasn't sure how I was going. Like when you offered to do the show, I was like, wow, this will be the first time back. But I've noticed I've just been more excited than anything. So it's good to be back.
Please tell us what type of cerebral palsy you have, how it affects you, etc.
Kristina, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, sure. I'll go first. So my cerebral palsy is spastic diplegia, meaning that it affects mostly my legs, but even though my arms are not technically in that diplegia diagnosis, I mean, I think I have a little bit of spasticity everywhere. So, but I pretty much do anything anybody else does. I mean, I work a full-time job as a teacher, and I enjoy going to the gym, spending time with family and friends. So yeah, it affects me, but I don't let it stop me from doing the things that I want to do. So that's me.
And mine is also spastic diplegia that mostly affects my legs, but the hands and arms every once in a while. I walk with arm crutches and I wear leg braces. And it's been a journey. I used to be in a wheelchair and then a walker and now my arm crutches, but through a lot of working on myself and physical therapy, and now I work a full-time job as well. As Kayla mentioned, my QIDP, which is like a case manager and direct support professional, working with those with physical and developmental disabilities. So it's crazy how it's come full circle. And now I work in this field.
I am Kayla Ireland. I have spastic quadriplegia, cerebral palsy, and epilepsy. Cerebral palsy affects all my motor skills, so I need physical help doing everything. I am a power wheelchair user. However, I can take some independent steps and small transfers, like from my bed to wheelchair or from my wheelchair to the couch. I use an adaptive joystick to operate my laptop. In addition to having to be fed, I have a swallowing disorder. My mealtimes are complicated because I have to take small bites and sips, make sure that food is on my teeth and not stuck on the roof of my mouth. The first misconception that I want to talk about is the hot topic in the search engine. When we now type the abbreviation for cerebral palsy CP, it thinks that we are looking up something illegal. Where did this come from?
It's really
Funny.
a shame that we are now CP is now being associated with illegal acts towards children. I saw that you had posted this on your Facebook last night, and as Kristina pointed out to me, actually, people couldn't search our show because it automatically said your search is for something illegal and you need to seek help. And it's like, no, CP has always stood for cerebral palsy to me my entire life, and to see it be associated with something like that is just really, it hurts my heart that now that's what it's going to be attached to for a while. I'm hoping we can, bring awareness to this issue and kind of get away from it, but it's going to take some time now that it's happened.
I will agree with Kyle. I think it came as a surprise to me. I know DJ had talked about it as well, because his show was having the same issue when it was searched. We ended up going back in, and you can, on your page, you can put like a nickname for your page. So we just put the CP Chronicles and then in parentheses the Cerebral Palsy Chronicles, and it got rid of the issue. So I guess that's just our public service announcement for anybody else out there, that if you're going to use CP as an abbreviation, you might just want to put cerebral palsy in parentheses. And for some reason that worked, that worked around the issues with Facebook, so people could search us again, which was good because we don't want people not able to follow our page.
Yeah.
I guess just adding cerebral palsy clarifies, like, no, I don't mean that other thing.
Right.
But just the fact that it is now being associated with that is just strange to me, because I've never thought of that being, a potential risk of something being associated with it, because CP is just always cerebral palsy. But when you grow up with cerebral palsy, like, I think to me that makes sense that we wouldn't assume that it would be associated with that. But I'm happy that we found that workaround. But when I want to add, when DJ brought up that people were saying that about his show, I didn't realize he couldn't search his show. I thought people were just like in the comments being like, hey, that's not what this stands for. And so it kind of shocked me that people were doing that. And then when it happened to us and that it kind of took our whole page offline, it was like, wait, what? Like that's really, like, I thought it was just kind of a few people like, oh, that'll go away. And like, here it hasn't gone away. So it's sad.
I don't understand why cerebral palsy is known as a childhood disability. Do you?
Well, typically it is diagnosed when, at birth or soon after. I think it may be even potentially up to 5 years old, but I think that is a misconception that, like, you're a child, you have this disability, you'll grow out of it. Here we are, grown adults. I'm about to be 30, and I still deal with CP differently now than I did when I was a child, but it's still very present.
Yeah. People often, like Kyle said, have that misconception that you're just going to grow out of it. And then people also say, oh, well, it doesn't get worse, and that maybe I'm stealing a misconception. Okay, but okay. No, I was gonna say it's like maybe I'm already stealing one of your other things on your list, but people think that it doesn't get worse because the brain damage is already done, which that's true. But the symptoms change, over a person's lifetime. So in that respect, I think it can get worse because you can regress, or, suddenly you can't do things as well as you used to be able to do them. Yeah, so it's interesting. People say that it doesn't change, but I think in a way it does. And actually, I read a stat somewhere, and now I'm not going to be able to find it, that there are now almost as many adults living with CP, or more adults living with CP than children, because those children, have grown up to be adults and the care is better. So people are living longer. with
That's-
CP.
That's great to hear. I want to say it really kind of boils down to, oh, go ahead. It kind of boils down to how much effort you have to like keep putting in all the time. Like you can work, do all the steps, follow all the instructions, and be fine as a child. But if you stop like I did, you'll end up, hurting and struggling. And I ended up going back to physical therapy. I won't speak for Kristina, but she also did and still is. And, you have to really keep it up. It's not something you can just say, I made it and I'm good.
Yeah. We age faster.
Yes, we
Yeah.
do.
Mhm. That is not the best part of CP, I'll tell you that. Mhm. Because sometimes I'll be like, I feel really old and I'm 29. That's why it's like, okay,
Yeah.
big picture. I really have to put in the effort here because by 60, I still want to be feeling pretty good or as good as possible.
Yeah.
And
The term nonverbal implies that people don't use language. What do you think of this term? Were you both always verbal?
Kristina, go ahead.
I'll go first on this one. I think, I don't know, the term nonverbal for me, it's everybody has something to say. Whether you're using other devices or whether you're using gestures. I mean, not everybody communicates in the same way, but nonverbal to me is just an interesting term because I feel like everyone still has something to say, no matter if they, say it the same way or a different way. So I was always extremely verbal. My parents always said that they had one walking and one talking, my sister being the one walking and me being the one talking away. And that has not changed. Now I can talk a lot in two languages because I also speak Spanish. So I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah. I've always been very vocal, not to the point of being, disrespectful and, get my point across. So,
Mhm. Like I told Kayla before we got on the show, we have the gift of gab. So it's like half an hour to an hour isn't going to be a problem. But I've always been verbal. I did have to attend speech therapy just for clarity reasons. But as someone who works with a variety of people with disabilities at my job, some who are quote unquote nonverbal, they still communicate in a way that's easily recognizable to those that are around them. It's just about paying attention to those signs that they use. Um, there's some that just kind of get loud, and it's like, okay, and I explain to those that are verbal but may not understand, like, why do they do that? Well, this is their way of getting my attention to do XYZ. And I say, yes, they are communicating with me. They can't tell me exactly what they need in the way that you and I can, but they still need something. And I have to learn, I've learned to pay attention to the small signals and body language, and they're communicating. So nonverbal, it's very limiting to the idea that you can't communicate. And communication, there's a lot of ways to do that.
Well, when I say I'm nonverbal, people should understand that I primarily use nonverbal communication. I fingerspell, verbalize some letters and words, and use body language.
Yeah, I think I think people assume that if you're nonverbal, that you don't have your own thoughts, your own ideas that you want to express. I think people just assume like you're just no, they don't want to contribute to the conversation. They don't want to contribute to, society in a way, and that's really unfortunate that people make that assumption. But as we all three know, people make a lot of assumptions about someone with a disability.
Yeah.
Another misconception is that people are confined to their wheelchair. Have you used a wheelchair?
I have. When I was growing up, I was so weak that I needed to use a wheelchair. It was a manual chair, but it only lasted a few years because I was in physical therapy from 9 months to just before I turned 18. So as I built up my strength, I was able to transition to a walker. And I will say, my time in a wheelchair, what I do remember of it is I did like it a lot of the time, because people, oh, I'll push you around, like, it made you feel kind of special. But then the reverse of that was sometimes you didn't want to feel special. You just wanted to, like, just let me be. So I did struggle with that a little bit. But that struggle has even transitioned, when I got to a walker, people could look at my walker. When I got to arm crutches, people see the arm crutches and the leg braces. So I think any assistive technology invites people that you can see, invites people to make assumptions about you. And it's just preparing yourself to kind of stand up and say, hey, this is me. Yes, I use a wheelchair, a walker, arm crutches. And say, but I'm also these other things.
Did you always sit in it?
Yes. But I could transfer. I see what you did there. I could transfer. I liked being on the floor more than in the chair, actually. I was a super crawler in my terms. I could get anywhere I needed to go crawling. But it's important to get out of your wheelchair. Imagine just sitting all day. I mean, that's not good either.
I am not in my wheelchair 24/7. If I'm home, the only time I'm in my wheelchair is if I'm at the table or my desk. When I'm at a show or a movie, I prefer to transfer.
Right? Because you want to be just as comfortable as anyone else at the movies, you know?
Right. They got those fancy reclining chairs now. You can like put your feet up, and got a cup holder right there. The movie theaters have gotten fancier over the years. I know Kyle and I always want to go for that. We always want to get there early so we get the recliners so we can put our feet up.
Yeah.
For me though, I really never used a chair minus when I had surgeries and stuff, but I always attribute that to having a twin who was like always willing to push me around and things, and was always like, come on, come on, come on. So I think I just was always racing to keep up with her. And yeah, I pretty much started in a walker and then went to one forearm crutch because 2 forearm crutches was awkward for me. I've never had a lot of arm strength, and because my right side was stronger, I would just lean to that right side, and it was like the left crutch, I didn't know what to do with it. Like I couldn't get a rhythm, like I wouldn't stick it down at the right time, and my therapist was like, that's not doing anything for you, and then just took it away and had me walk with the right one. And then I was fine. She said I looked pretty good with that, so that's what we stuck to. I've had periods of using 2 crutches as an adult because of my back, the issues with my back, so that helps like to kind of even things out so I wasn't rotating so much, but I definitely prefer the one crutch just because I could carry things and be a little bit more independent that way. So
This one is also big. People with disabilities cannot lead a full and productive life.
Yeah, that's one of those that people still assume that we just sit in the house, because that used to be how it was. Disability was something to be ashamed of, and people would hide us away. And still have had people say, "Oh, it's so good to see you out," and I'm like, "Oh, we still have that stigma there." And it's like, yes, I didn't start working full time regularly until 2021, so I did spend time at home, but I still liked going out to eat. I still liked going to the movies. I still went shopping. I still did all the things that I needed to do. And when I would get those off comments of like, it's so good to see you out, it's like, oh, do you expect me not to be out? And that's why I think it's important to
Kyle, we were
get out. Oh, go ahead, Kristina.
sorry. We were together when it happened, Kyle. Do you remember the way we looked at each other and looked at that person like, who are you? Do I know you? Because they were like, oh, it's so good to see you guys out. And we're just like, what? Like, we were so taken aback, like not understanding why someone would say something like that.
Well, and I guess we could contribute it to maybe they just don't know a lot of people with disabilities, so they still have that like old time mindset that like that's what disability is. But I don't care if you're in a wheelchair, walker, whatever you need to be in, if you want to be out, get out and show people this is the new disability, because I still feel like we're still trying to shake that off.
Yeah. I mean, and not letting parents, I know that there are a lot of parents out there with disabilities who might be a little overprotective and they don't want their son or daughter to do X, Y, Z. But, even in that situation, I think you need to be an advocate for yourself and you need to say, hey, I'm capable of this, and like, let's try it. And if it doesn't go well, then we can rethink and we can try to be advocates to show people that we can, or there's sometimes a hesitancy to let us do those things.
Yeah, I think parents are afraid of how the world is going to treat their child, because this world is known for being very hard, but you have to let them try, because the lack of experience as a child does come back to get you as an adult. I will say that. Like, it's important to learn how to fail as a child and get back up and try again, then try to do that as an adult. Like, I it's a process, and it's one of those you have to just learn how to bounce back, because people are hard. I mean, even in advocacy, people still see me and will, oh, look at that lazy eye, and look at, so many other things. And it's like, you have to learn how to not let that get to you. And if you don't experience some of those things as a child, it's going to be a real shock as an adult.
I overcome each challenge without giving up a fight, including being the office manager, in charge of emails, marketing, reviewing documents, and all-around multitasker for my former speech therapist's office needs. I am a
Oh, that's
professor of living with cerebral palsy, led by Kyle Scott, where each story will pull at your heartstrings and leave you feeling equally inspired by its resilience, honesty, and sheer determination. I'm also a member of State Student Disability Council as a student of State Community College. I'm the communication assistant and a dedicated member of many committees for my professional association of therapeutic horsemanship certified center, where I'm an avid and experienced horseback rider who focuses on paradressage since 2017. When I'm not working, I enjoy spending time with family and friends, playing games, riding the quad and snowmobile, swimming, and cheering my sisters on as they dance.
And like that sounds like a super full life. So just hearing all that, I'm like, wow, I didn't know she even did all that. I mean, I know you do a lot, but even just hearing all of that, I'm like, how do you fit all that in on your plate? And then, if we just all rattled off everything we do, I think people would be like, whoa, I didn't know that was possible. Um, and I think people like to limit what's possible for us very easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are quick to assume, which is why, that's why Kyle and I are on this show today, and that's why we started the CP Chronicles, because we wanted to share our experiences, and by sharing, the more experiences we can share, the more we can break down those stereotypes and those misconceptions, so that people don't just automatically assume things about us.
How
That's
about
always going to be.
curious children should never ask people about their disabilities?
Oh, I love when kids ask me. Go ahead, Christina. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love when kids ask me. I would rather them ask, or I'd rather them and learn something from it than just like be afraid of people with disabilities because they don't understand. It's not something to be afraid of. It's something that should be taught at a young age, because if you're taught about it at a young age, then you don't have a fear of it, or I mean, it just becomes part of your, like, this is normal. And I think it prevents a lot of further issues down the road.
I agree. This is a message for parents. When you tell your child don't stare or don't ask the question or don't go up to them, you're teaching them that disability is not okay. It's not something we should talk about. And
Right.
you're doing your child a disservice, because they will run into people with disabilities in their life. I mean, and every time they see them, do you want them to react negatively to that
Right.
person? Allowing your child to ask questions creates a positive experience for them. At least from my perspective, there will be those who don't want you to ask questions. Your kids will go up to them and they will be like, "Leave me alone," or maybe they're having a bad day, they're in a negative space. But more often than not, you will see them wanting them to ask. And I love creating that positive, reinforcement that, like, hey, it's okay to ask these questions. And I want to speak to my niece, because that's all she's known is me with my disability, my crutches. She likes my crutches. She actually wants to play on them a lot. But she doesn't see me as disabled. She'll ask me to do some things that I'm like, "Oh, honey, I can't do that." And she's like, "Well, just try." And I'm like, "Okay, honey, I will try for you." And sometimes I try and it works out, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have to change the game here or do something a little differently. And she will. Once she sees that, like, oh, she calls me Kai Kai. Once she's like, oh, Kai Kai, you can't do that. You just sit there and I'll do this. So she'll adapt whatever we're doing once she sees that it's not something for me. But she wants me to show her that it's not for me. She's not one of those slackers. She's like,
So sweet.
you could try it. So, but knowing she's going to grow up with that positive experience makes me happy.
Kyle, finish what you were saying before this misconception.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what I was saying. Oh, yeah. Well, it's, I just, every time I see my niece and how she like doesn't see me as disabled. I'm like, kids are the future. So if we show our kids that like this is okay, like we're going to be much better off down the road, and they're going to see a kid with a disability, later on and be like, oh, hey, friend, like let's be friends. So I'm happy I can be a part of that. It feels small in the moment, but knowing that like she's going to be set to not treat people with disabilities the way I've seen myself be treated is like I'm doing a good job. But even Kristina, you have, like Monica's children, and like you interact with your students. So you do the
Yeah,
same thing.
that's it's the same thing. I mean, like my students are sometimes even a little bit more about questions with finesse, but like you're not being rude. Like I'm an open book. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. So I do occasionally get questions from them, but definitely not as much as when I was, in my teacher training program and worked with the younger kids. Then it was like a lot of questions every day. It felt like 20 questions, like, but that's okay. I mean, that's how they learn, is by asking questions. So
Ooh, I do want to say, let your young kids ask the question how they're going to ask it, because they don't always know how to be, I don't know, or use finesse, I should say. So like I'd
yeah,
rather
no,
them just ask the question and then like explain how they could, answer the question, but then explain, next time XYZ.
right, right, because they're just gonna say, "What? Why are your legs broken?" Like I've gotten that. Like, why are your legs broken? It's like, oh, honey, these aren't casts. These are just, my braces. Like they help me walk, but my legs aren't broken. They bend just fine. Like they move just fine. See, like,
Yeah. Because if they don't know how to ask it, just let them ask it. And then that's how they learn how.
Yeah.
right,
We're almost afraid to let kids learn. It's okay if they don't do it exactly right, because that's how they'll get better at it.
right.
Awareness matters.
Absolutely.
Yes. Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. I'm happy we have a month.
Yeah.
Why would someone think that it is all right for people without disabilities to park in accessible parking spaces, if only for a few minutes?
Oh, that one gets me. And people talk about, oh, like what places like Walmart and these other stores, they have so many handicap spaces. I'm like, really? They have so many handicap spaces? Because most of the times that I go and they're people park in there and, oh, well, I was just running in to get something, or I was just, they make all these excuses, and it's like, well, what did you think I was just doing? I'm also just running in to get a few groceries, but yet you're parking in the spot that I need. I don't. And then people also don't realize the dashed lines on the sides of the handicap parking spaces. For anybody out there that doesn't know, that's for people who use wheelchairs and need a wheelchair ramp to enter and exit their car. So if you're parking like a crazy person and you're on those dashed lines, you need to back up and straighten out your car, because you're gonna be in somebody else's way. And then not only can they not get themselves in the car, they can't get their chair in the car, they sometimes can't get out of the car. People need to be mindful that those yellow slashed lines are not for parking.
I
Yeah,
can't
it always
use a handicapped vehicle if there's no room to do so.
it always irks me when people park and they don't have a handicap placard of any kind. And it's changed for me because, I didn't drive until 2021. So for so long I was a passenger, but now as a driver, I'm like, I just want to pull up closer to the store. Like, let me make it easy for me, please. And I will say a lot of times when there isn't one, I'll be like, okay, I'm getting my steps in today. Like, I try to turn it to something nice, but it is frustrating.
Yeah.
And most of the time when I'm going to the store, I'm going to the store for a cart full of groceries, not just a few things. So I don't want to have to, haul all that stuff that much further if I don't have to.
Mm.
Is it necessity or laziness here? Like, I need this as a necessity, as a function of my ability to get my groceries. You are just tired of walking.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. It always makes you wonder, like, what is their reason? Did they forget their handicap? Because one time we forgot to put my handicap placard in the window, and we got a ticket. It was at ISU when my parents were like coming to get me from the dorm. I think it was move
Oh
out or
yeah.
something. And we got a ticket, and like all we had to do was like show proof that they had the placard. So they ended up not having to pay it. But yeah, it can happen, but the majority of the time you're like, you're not disabled. Or maybe, I don't know, that kind of begs the question, invisible disability.
Yeah.
Too, you
Right.
can't try not to
But
be too judgmental, but
right. I mean, not every disability you can see, but you hope that those people most of the time remember to put their placard up to show that, yes, I have, the proper qualifications to be in this space.
mhm.
Are there any other misconceptions you want to touch upon?
Oh,
Oh, well, I think just the thing that always bugged me was like the non-intelligence assumption, like how sometimes people will come up to you and talk to you like you're a lot younger than you are, just kind of talking to you like you're a kid, like not assuming that you know like how to communicate or or that they assume that you're not going to understand. And that has always irked me because like I'm a 28-year-old woman who's bilingual. Like I can clearly understand you and clearly carry on a conversation, but the number one assumption of someone much younger, and I understand that everybody's case with cerebral palsy is different, but like I feel like you should always talk to the person, talk to them, at them, not at someone else that they're with, and like see how they respond, and then based on their response you can gauge where the conversation needs to go from there, but you shouldn't always assume that they can't communicate.
you took the words right out of my mouth, because it's just like, just try. It goes back to just be willing to respect that person, and then as you said, just see where the conversation goes.
Presume we understand.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. Just presume that we understand, and if there's a misunderstanding you can backtrack and you can figure it out. But
Communication always isn't simple, but it's necessary and it's doable. I mean, you just have to be willing to stop and be like, where are we at? How can we meet in the middle here? But
yeah.
the more we talk about it, the better it will get. At least that's what I hope for. Yeah.
Thank you for doing this segment with me. It was great.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having us. And this is your first show, right? So
everyone watching, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.